Good. All right. Okay. Thanks for coming. I know there's another talk going on, application security, so I appreciate you being here. I'm going to be talking about an in-depth look into the VSLs system that the government has deployed through several. Yes, I can. That the government uses. They're variable speed limit systems. They've been used in different capacities since the 50s, actually. It's just only nowadays to where you can get it networked and put into the Internet of Things. So we're going to be going through that today. As everyone else here has, it's a disclaimer. The work within represents my own research and opinion. It does not reflect the views of my employer. I was told to put that in there, make sure it was in there. Everybody wants that in there as soon as you ever tell them about what you're doing, especially this. So moving on, a little bit about me. Professionally, I work as a security analyst from Atlanta. I was also born in the South, so if you hear a little bit of a Southern twang, I apologize. I have worked very hard to get rid of it. It's impossible, okay? Certain parts won't go away, but I try. So yeah, work as a security analyst. I pretty much also work as a security engineer. DJ, know who I was talking about. Before I got into my official InfoSec career, I freelanced as a security consultant for about a year, going around doing freelance work. I'd go to someone's door and knock on it and say, hey, do you want a free vulnerability scan? Some said yes, some said hell no, go away. Got my experience there, then moved on, got to learn what I needed to know. Below is this contact information, a little bit about me. This will be available online later on. So we're going to go through the history, why these systems exist in the first place, how they function, how they communicate, and potential security risk. History. So this is pretty much how this is my opinion, the first generation of these things. Granted, like I said, the VSLs have been around since the 50s in different capacities. It's just that back in the day, they had to tell the Department of Transportation, like, hey, go out to all the signs and flip them up, make them 55. Flip them up, make them 65. You know, these got introduced, I think in the 80s, sometime, 70 or 80s or so. They're standard. These are known as variable message signs or portable changeable message signs. A bunch of different ones. If you've ever seen one, then you've seen them in these states before. They're very easy to get into. It takes zero effort to get into these things for the most part. Most of these, especially the orange ones, were made by a company, Techtronic. They make pretty much all of them. They also make the things that hang in the middle of Madison Square Garden. They're very well known for what they do. The bad part is that when they ship these things, they hard code in the default username and password. Department of Transportation gets them, says, oh, hook it to the truck, take it out there, tell people there's snow on the road. Then Mario's in another, or Mario and the Princess later on. It was very simple. You get access to it, you cut the lock, you use the controller, you change it and put your message up there. I've seen funny ones and I've seen vulgar ones, so don't recommend this, not endorsing this, don't do it. Then you had later on different ones. So you had what I also consider the second generation. It's not officially the second generation, it's what I consider to be the second generation. These were called variable message signs, also known as changeable electronic dynamic, and in the UK they're known as matrix signs. These are a lot tougher actually to get into. A lot of these also, I don't believe they ever connected over fiber optic. They could have. I'm sure the internet will let me know. But most of the time it's always the EPL that went out to a box, translated a signal, put a sign up on the window, the screen itself. But you could also go up to it and there's a padlock box on the side that has a serial connector on the inside of it. If you know Linux, you can change the messages displayed on it. People also got a hold of that as well. The one at the top, one to the right, was actually done somewhere, I think in Raleigh, Asheville area of North Carolina. He got caught and arrested. So don't do this. They will find you because most of the time, especially for the main topic, the VSLs, they have cameras pointing at all these things. Probably for this very reason. So why do these exist? Why spend? And like I said, I'm from Atlanta. The Atlanta area around the belt that goes around Atlanta implemented this last year. cost about $5.5 million to implement this system, and that was 88 signs. So they're expensive, so why go through all this trouble? Well, first, traffic control. That's primarily the reason why they do this. These things can, going off sensors that I'll go over, will adjust speed. So even though, yeah, it's rush hour and it's Friday and it's gridlocked like this guy here is trying to go 55 miles per hour every time he gets 10 feet in front of him. So when you get these signs installed, you can just remotely say, you know what, 35. Anyone going past that gets arrested, or they don't get arrested. They get pulled over, get a ticket, and it controls. It gives a level of control. Secondly, it reduces accidents. And you don't want to, I mean, this is exactly why I got rid of things like this. So it reduces accidents. You know, you get to these types of situations to where people want to speed every moment they get 10, 15, 20 feet ahead of them. They're going to hit somebody eventually. I got hit the other week. I was in one of these areas. It's not perfect, I suppose, at that point. But this is another reason why they do it. And third, statistics. Basically, they want to have statistics. They want to know how many people are traveling these roads a day, how many people are getting in accidents a day. But by using these, they can say, well, if the speed limit was lower, then we have this many accidents. If it was higher, we have these many accidents. So obviously nowadays it's always statistics and metrics and any other kind of information gathering activity that you can do. So how do they function? Well, they use a combination of sensors in order to change the displayed speed that's up there. Some of it's automatic, some can be manual, it depends. It really comes down to the person that's controlling the VSLs, which would be someone in the Department of Transportation. So you have VDSs. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed these things up on the road. I have them a whole lot. I've never known what they did, I've never looked into them until I got to going down this road and figuring out all these things. What it does is it counts cars going by, or it can count cars going by. But at the same time, like the one on the right, it can count the height of the car. That way they can say, well, this many cars goes by, this many trucks go by, this many semis go by. So they get that. So at that point, they can say, well, in the last 5 minutes, 2,000 cars went by here instead of the normal 500. They know then that the system's going to go through a series of algorithms and it's going to say, well, we need to lower the speed because the traffic incident is going to occur soon. Also works off weather sensors. This is a graphic I found. I'm sure they don't all look like this, but you'll have things that goes off wind speed, humidity, any kind of moisture level that's going on, and this all feeds into the system and it works into telling the main control that whether or not, if the road's getting too wet, then we need to adjust the speed. If it's getting too cold, then we need to adjust the speed, et cetera, et cetera. And also road conditions sensors. So these things, the little black one in the middle is a puck that would be installed in the actual ground, in the pavement on the road, and it can tell whether or not some sort of, maybe even a flammable liquid's been poured on top of it, if a oil-based liquid's been poured on top of it. And it can go back, send alerts through filters and say, there's a condition that exists, dispatch EMS. Or not EMS, but the response personnel. So how do they communicate? Primarily because of the distance that are involved in these things. At least in Atlanta, in 285, like I said, there's 88 of them. Each one, I believe, is 2 to 2.5 miles apart. They're always a mile down from the nearest on-ramp. So fiber optic is obviously the best idea to communicate to these things, unless of course you're going past this general distance without a regenerator being put in between. But you would think at that point, probably as long as fiber optic's been around, there'd be better uses for it, other than what they typically do, such as these things. These things are also used for fiber optic. They shouldn't be. People get behind them, they get them at events, they slam on the back of your neck, they make noise. It's not good. It's not good to have. So that's overall the primary function of fiber optics. Secondly, there's wireless communication. So a lot of these, and I have a picture of the ones that are deployed in Atlanta. If anyone's been here up on I-4 has some of these things installed. They're a little bit different than the ones we have in Atlanta, but they still work the same way. Still get a signal, I believe it's through fiber optic. I looked into the one in Florida. Florida's website on the Department of Transportation allows you to, or Georgia, yeah, Georgia's Department of Transportation has a website. You can look at the project, you can download the PDFs, you can look at all the original construction notes, all the original order notes, you can really go through everything. Florida does not. So wireless communication is another one. This cellular, long distance Wi-Fi, standard radio, it really depends. I noticed Here lately, the SDR community has really been blowing up, getting a lot bigger. So I'm sure somebody probably take a look into that, see exactly how they're communicating per state. I'm sure it's always different, however they want to implement it themselves. And then there's standalone. Standalone, like the DMSs that, like I said, we consider second generation. Someone has to go out to plug a serial cable into it and say they can program times, really whatever they want, as far as how they're going to set the speed, but maybe not, when they can remotely connect to it, it sets itself, that sort of thing. So, main point of this is where we spend most of our time. I don't know if I'm going a little bit too fast or not, but this, like I said, this is outside the main point. What are the security risks? So, like I said, I've spent a lot of time. I've been working on this for about 6 months because Atlanta implemented their system in September. They finalized it in September and got it all going. And as soon as I got into it, I started wondering, what if somebody got in there? Everybody in this room, no one's going to disagree. If somebody got into the systems and set all those speed limit signs at 99 miles per hour, people are going to go 99 miles per hour. Nobody would even second guess it. So what are the potential security risks? There is no encryption on these things. I contacted a lot of the manufacturers of these signs that specialize in them. Anybody can make them. I mean, all you gotta have is a controller that can receive a signal, output it to a board, and it display a number. But there are companies out there, manufacturers out there that actually specialize in these things, that make them. It is their day-to-day, is what they make their money off of. And all the ones I could find. Can't say I talked to all of them, but I talked to a lot. I talked to 10 plus. None of them use encryption. They don't have the hardware that supports decryption on their side. They don't have the ability to take in anything other than the plain text that they get. So obviously that's the biggest issue with it. So with there being no encryption, that obviously opens up the attack for a man in the middle. A man in the middle is the most easiest and undetectable way to get into that. At least in the case of this, if there's no encryption. You would have to have, I would imagine, an IDS deployed down the line to actually see if somebody's getting in between you and the signs to actually see what's going on. You also have the problem, and even if it is fiber optic, people can say, well, it's a little hard against the fiber optic network. It's really not. There's a fiber optic, I don't want to say hack, but there's a fiber optic way. It's called bending. All you do is you bend the actual fiber optic. You don't have to cut into it. You don't have to cut into the line. You bend it, literally physically bend it, and you have a coupler on it. So that's a little tiny bend. It lets a little bit of light radiate through the sheath, and that goes into a photo detector. And sorry, I have notes here for this because this is a little bit, I've never done it before, obviously. But it has a little photo detector hooked to it. That connects to a little converter that then translates that to electrical signals, and you have that convert to a network interface, and then you can figure out exactly what's going on. Because it's just light, it's just the way it just transmits through the actual fiber optic cable. So it doesn't make it hard. So that being the case, with VSLs, what exactly would be the progress, the process in order to do this? So basically, you start out in the command center, wherever that would be in your city. Department of Transportation will control it. So that would start at probably a server, Windows XP, hope not, Windows 7 PC, which we then go to a switch or a router, a firewall, and it ends up going out to the road. Goes out to a box in the road. These things can have amplifiers in them for the signals going out. It can have generators for fiber optic. You can have a converter just to convert it to the signal that may be going out, depending on how it's being transmitted. You have a collector. A lot of those boxes out on the side of the road for cable companies or telecom companies, it's a collector. Just collects all of them and then sends them down a smaller line. Or you can go through to EPL. Really depends on whatever the city decides is the best way of doing it. That ends up going to another box that's on the back of the signs, and I took these are the ones that are deployed in Atlanta. So that ends up coming in down here, up here, and you have the actual main box on the back side of the speed limit sign. It goes into there, it gets transmitted or translated, and you get the output on the sign itself. So it's not, like I said, it's complicated. It's not overly complicated, but that's all there is really involved with it. Then you have social engineering. Now this may not seem like a big thing as far as the security point of it, but when you think about government, you have people that have literally worked in the government for decades. And these are people that they're not technologically inclined, they don't really understand. So you could really call in and say, hey, I'm out here on the side of the road, I need to get one of these signs, I need to get the information for this. You don't know whose grandma's gonna let you into these things. You never know. And I did a little digging into the census. The average age of a government employee is 45 in the US as a whole. And even though I know there's people that are way older than me, that know way more than I do, you have to get into that mind of that standard government worker that doesn't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do their job. They're trying to make someone happy. And those are obviously the people that anytime you're ever trying to social engineer someone, those are the people that you're really trying to get to. So, then past that, you have malware, targeted malware. Problem with this is, according to a census report, not census report, but the Chief Information Officer of the Department of Labor in 2015 said that even still in the United States, inside state and federal and government agencies, there's over 10,000 computers per state still running Windows XP. Yeah, so that's primarily the issue with that. Windows, I'm sure everyone knows, Windows XP is end of life. That opens up every door for every 0 day that was released, April 7th, April 8th, last year. So then you also have Bluetooth. Inside these, inside the actual VSL, depending on the company that makes them, some of them either in order to get into the box, you either have to connect to it via serial cable, or you have to get into it via Bluetooth, low power Bluetooth. These things actually have a Bluetooth antenna inside of it. The ones in Atlanta don't. I called and asked. They're actually very helpful if you call and tell them that, I'm looking into this sort of thing. Some of them are, some of them are not. Some of them want to know exactly who you are, where you live, and why you're talking to them. So, I got that a couple of times, and I was like, who are you? So with Bluetooth, and guys out here, I think from Hacker Warehouse, sell Ubertooth. That's obviously a way of getting to it. Then you have things like BT Scanner, Blue Diving, this is Blue Snarf, BT Crack, I think. Is that right? Yeah, BT Crack. It's standard Bluetooth from what the manufacturer told me. Like I said, the ones in Atlanta, obviously I wasn't going to test it, by the way. I did not connect to any of these. Yes?
So you're going over attack surface here.
Mm.
What are the actual potential security risks? Because I work for a company that we do connected car stuff, and every time when people talk about like the security behind it, it's so much. You can do so much more damage just by throwing a bunch of nails on the highway. And like with this, that slide that you had with the sign where it had the speed limit.
Right.
Somebody can just change the number on it.
Right.
What prevents someone just taking a white sign and putting it over that? Like when you're driving, you don't see. Okay, fine. Then it says 99 on there, and people will believe that too. So
right. So
the physical attacks are just the same as like unless you're talking about say taking one of those boxes and then going back to say FDOT and then attacking FDOT from there. But still, you have maybe access to cameras. I just don't really see what is the big potential security risk.
Well, security risk would be, and that's after this or after the next slide, but that to address it, so the security risk would be to set speed limit signs to what they're not supposed to be. That being the case, we all have loved ones that we have. You don't want these things to happen because people will go that speed. People will hit those speed limits, and even though, you could post up a sign or so that says, 99 miles per hour. Thing is when it comes to that stuff, if you were to go to that, you couldn't say, oh, well, the sign told me it was 99 miles per hour, because you're going to know whether or not, unless you get a hold of an actual Department of Transportation speed limit sign. But
eBay,
well, hopefully it won't be that easy. You can just pull up the side of the highway and actually install one or put it over top of one.
It is just as easy from the physical side, I think personally, and with changing the number, I don't think that the dangers are actually really there, because places like in Europe where people are all driving that speed, there are
Right.
more crashes. But anyway, I digress.
I'm going to go off of what he's saying. He said in Europe everybody drives the same speed. Well, like on the Autobahn or something in Germany, when someone goes slow, you just get a 10-car pile. So like you're saying, it is very real. Like somebody could accelerate instantly to 100 miles per hour or something like that. There's still someone
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to, like, I guess the physical safety of everyone traveling. And that was the first thing I thought of. Like I said, when I saw this and I saw them deployed, the first thing I thought of was somebody got in there and actually changed the speeds. There'd be people that would obey it and people who wouldn't obey it. Because even still, all states still have a, what's it called? A maximum speed limit that you cannot, under no circumstance, ever exceed. Not everyone knows that. Some people do, some people don't. If you don't know it and you see the sign, you're going to think that you're legally able to go that speed. So you're going to have those on the interstate that are going 55, and you have people on the interstate that are going 99. And they're just going to weave back and forth. Right. So I mean, I guess that's what I consider the risk is just physical harm. I mean, yeah, you could put a physical sign up.
Or throw a box of nails.
Either or. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of ways of doing it, but with the growing Internet of Things, I guess I just wouldn't want that, especially like I said with the other systems within the Department of Transportation, being older, being on XP. If somebody from China or Korea or North Korea and their little bureau that they have was just to get into it. I don't know if anyone's seen Die Hard 4. Ian mentioned Die Hard 3, but in Die Hard 4, yeah, I mean, yeah, somebody was just to try and do something like that, whether or not they cared to do it or not. The potential's there. And even when I called some of these Department of Transportations, they pretty much were kind of blown away too that that would be an issue. And like you had a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it seems like a part of the risk is that people are gonna be expecting these speed limits to change. Whereas a traditional sign, it's always the same.
Right.
But these are variable signs, and maybe if some of them are saying, hey, we need to drop traffic down to 25, and the other ones are up to 75, people are expecting to change it and be more likely to follow.
Yeah.
It's also possible to create discrepancies between different pieces of traffic. So you could have some traffic going 35, and then you could accelerate the people behind them to about 100.
Right.
And you could have them slam.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the issue. Yeah.
One thing is even like on I-4 here, if you get somebody slowing down just a little bit, it's going to cause gridlock for miles.
Exactly. Yeah, and
slow it down and lock everything.
now I will say I will give at least Georgia's Department of Transportation some credit. I give them a lot of credit because the system works great. I think it's done good on 285, especially on Fridays. But I don't know if anyone's been to Atlanta. I don't know how traffic is around here. I don't live here, but in Atlanta, so they have all the sensors that are tied into it. They actually do it pretty much autonomously, completely automatic. They said it's very little in the paperwork that's offered by the Department of Transportation. Said it requires very little human input. But if they wanted to manually change it, there's a drop down that they have. That drop down has 3 speeds in it. It's 45, 55, and 65. They can't change it outside of that. But again, no encryption, man in the middle, etc., etc. So going on with that, I learned this is the NPCIP. This is the National Transportation Communication for Intelligent Transportation Systems Protocol. It's long. There's no encryption requirement in this thing whatsoever. This goes back into, and again, I'm sure the internet will correct me if I'm wrong, this also ties into cameras that are controlled by the state, red lights that are controlled by the state. Anything that's controlled by the state goes through, or any intelligent transportation system like those all have to obey this outline, this guide. Now there are several parts to it. There's several parts to it, but mainly this is the main guide. This goes through and basically says, these are things you can and can't do, but each one has its own elaborative, separate document. I went through them all scanned for, all searched for encryption, read most of them, searched for encryption, searched for the word crypt, nothing shows up. So there is nothing outlined by, and this is issued by the government, that says you have to have encryption on these things. And I think it's more so that's more the bigger issue. But it's the government. What are you gonna do? And that's my last slide. So that's that. Really quick, making everyone's life easier. So is there any more questions or anything? Yes, sir.
So what do you think it sounds like everyone's talking about risk, and actually I think that last slide was really powerful because password reuse, I think, would be one of the biggest issues. So it's not just that these things aren't encrypted. How many of those passwords that you're seeing, well, that's actually the question, is are they authenticated at all?
So when I called the company that makes them in Atlanta, I called them. They weren't responsive to me asking them questions. I didn't want to go the route of trying to social engineering answers out of them. So I called other companies, and other companies they were more happy to talk to me, mainly because they didn't have systems in Atlanta, I'm sure. But some of them do, but only between what they have is basically they have a box between where you'd have maybe the Department of Transportation's main command center, and it goes to another box, and then that goes out to all of them because they all work one off. Or just one goes to the next. If one falls, and at least wherever they said they had a system at, whole thing fails. But it's not like that in Atlanta. Atlanta doesn't work away. It has a wireless backup in Atlanta. But some authenticate. The rest of them, no. You send it information, displays it on the screen.
Is it bidirectional?
No, it's all one way.
That's one way. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's a little.
I can't say for all of them, but for the ones that I got in contact with, it's all one way. Because they, like I said, most of them have cameras that are pointed at them. That's their bidirectional authentication, or not authentication, but bidirectional way of figuring out whether or not this sign is displaying what it's supposed to or not.
If I could make a statement while people were asking questions, the risks really I see too with that, as you mentioned the cameras, there's really more privacy concerns than anything. You've created a surveillance network that if you chose to, you could utilize that for your own purposes. And then second, I see those first gen and second gen as being the higher risk. If you can create panic by saying that there's a shooting or something like that diverts people off the roads, that's a real social safety issue.
True.
And if you use an Amber Alert to take someone that you're not particularly happy with and say their license plate, if you see this guy, get him.
Yeah.
That also I would say would be a real attack vector.
True. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a very good point. Yeah. I mean, I just hope that something like this puts pressure on the government to lock these things down, because I don't want this to happen. My wife's in here with me. I wouldn't want nothing to happen to her. I wouldn't want nothing to happen to her family, my family, anyone's family. We shouldn't like that happening. You know, like he mentioned from Die Hard 4, there was that fail-safe thing. Yeah, granted, they took over the entire government's infrastructure. Unlikely, but I mean, the potential's there when you don't employ encryption, when you don't employ, like you said, maybe authentication in between the two, and that's what worries me. And if I'm putting my life, or not my life, I guess it's a little dramatic to say, but if I'm putting myself on these interstates, I don't want that to happen, because I'm gonna obey what I can, at least, or whatever. But I'm not gonna go 99 miles per hour in the interstate. I wouldn't hope anyone would, but there would be those that would, and that to me, that's the risk. You know, that's what I would worry about, because then you go back to that guy flying off the ramp. Yes, sir.
So did you actually get to change any of them?
No, did not touch any of these signs at all. No. So, like I said, I called several Department of Transportations. I called several manufacturers, talked to them. Some of them, the moment I said, I'm just doing some security research, no, we're not talking to you. We're not having nothing to do with you. We don't want that information public. We don't want anyone to know about this. And that thing worries me, because I've never seen it. It may exist. I'm sure, like I said, internet will tell me. But I don't know if it exists that they have security audits that are done on the state that's not done by the state. The state's not going to throw itself underneath the bus. There's no way. But if you had a third party come in to evaluate these things, maybe then, yeah, they would see these. And, even these signs, even like they have IP addresses attached to them. It's outlined in the actual documentation. It doesn't say what the IP addresses are. But it wouldn't be hard once you got into the system and start doing a network scan and you see 88 of these things pop up. That's the risk, that's the concern, and it goes into that. So, no, I never touched them. I wasn't going to, as much as I would love to show like a console up there, or this is a configuration, it's not worth it. Not to me anyway, but I would love to have done that. And, like I said, a few of the people I talked to, they were really helpful. They taught me, some of them taught me 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so about it. They were just real receptive to do it. But, at the end, they're not going to say, yeah, sure, connect in, do whatever you like. It'd be nice, but no, like I said, it's not worth the risk. Anybody else? Yeah.
Any suggestions as far as maybe action that people could take with writing your local congressman or whoever manages their DOT, maybe your county does or something like that, to try to see what sort of audit, what kind of progress we can make on security?
Right.
How much it would cost to replace every single
Not
bit?
necessarily replacing, but at least, I mean,
Right, and so when I called a few of these,
Firmware.
yeah, so when I called some of these people, the manufacturers, I said, can you not enable encryption? Put it as in a feature. A lot of them say they don't have the hardware to do it. So it would require that. I'm all for what you said. If the camera, I don't know, can they hear them back there?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, you could write the Department of Transportation. I highly doubt they're gonna be like, yeah, sure, we're going to do it. But yeah, I mean, definitely. I would, from what I understand, could be wrong. Please correct me. Contacting the Department of Transportation. Department of Transportation is controlled by the actual state. There's only one in the state. So getting in touch with probably your congressman, your governor, so on and so forth, telling them that these are the risks. Don't let your state be the one that has Die Hard 4 happen to it or anything like that. Don't let your state be the one that causes some massive 300 car pile up in the middle of rush hour on a Friday or something. So, yeah, it's a really good idea. Everyone should get in touch with their local government and get that done. More? Okay, well, that's all I got. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone learned a little.